the forgotten empire that haunted Israel for 6 centuries. Throughout ancient scripture, there exists a descriptor loaded with such cultural weight that its mere utterance conveyed absolute disdain. The uncircumcised. In ancient Israel's world, this single term represented everything foreign, everything profane, everything opposing the covenant community established by the Almighty. When you examine the sacred texts, this label appears with striking consistency, pointing almost exclusively toward one civilization: the Philistines. These weren't simply military adversaries or neighboring tribes with different religious customs. They represented something far more troubling. They embodied fundamental otherness, an incompatibility with everything the children of Abraham understood about their divine calling. For 600 years, they established themselves as the most persistent existential threat Israel ever faced. They captured the Ark of the Covenant itself, parading it through their cities. They monopolized iron production, forcing Israel's armies to fight with inferior bronze weapons. They killed King Saul and displayed his corpse on city walls. They sent a 9-foot giant named Goliath to mock the armies of the living God. Then they vanished. This powerful civilization dissolved into antiquity, their culture absorbed, their language forgotten, their cities abandoned. Yet their name survived across millennia. Today, millions claim heritage from a territory called Palestine. Political movements insist Palestinians represent the indigenous population, possessing ancestral claims stretching thousands of years. The evidence seems obvious. Palestine. Philistine. The linguistic similarity appears undeniable. But here's the question nobody asks. Were ancient Philistines actually ancestors of modern Palestinians? And if not, who were these sea peoples who terrorized Israel for 6 centuries? Before we dive deeper, I need you to do something quick. If you're finding this compelling, smash that like button right now. It helps us reach more people searching for historical truth. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss when we uncover another hidden layer of biblical history. Let's get back to this ancient puzzle. The modern assumption seems simple. Palestinians descended from Philistines. But historical reality reveals something completely different. Ancient Philistines originated from Aegean regions, parts of Greece and Mediterranean islands. They spoke a non-Semitic language completely lost to history. Most critically, they were entirely extinct by the 6th century before the Common Era, over 2,500 years ago. Modern Palestinians trace their ethnic origins to Arab populations from the Arabian Peninsula. They speak Arabic, a Semitic language in a completely different linguistic family. These Arabs didn't arrive in significant numbers until the 7th century Common Era, following Islamic conquests. Between the Philistine extinction and Arab arrival, over 1,200 years of complete absence stretched across history. 12 centuries with zero genetic connection, absolutely no linguistic continuity, and no cultural preservation linking these groups. How does a name survive when the civilization it described has been completely erased? To answer that, we must understand who the Philistines were, where they came from, and why they became Israel's most enduring threat. Genesis chapter 10, verse 14, and Amos chapter 9, verse 7 reference Philistines coming from Caphtor. Modern scholarship identifies Caphtor with Crete, the Mediterranean island south of Greece. This isn't speculation. Archaeological evidence confirms biblical texts. Around 1175 before the Common Era, the eastern Mediterranean plunged into chaos. Egyptian records describe invasions by coalitions called the Sea Peoples. These weren't nomadic wanderers. These were organized naval forces toppling civilizations. Cities became ruins. Trade routes severed. Empires collapsed under coordinated assault. Among these sea peoples were the Philistines, arriving on Canaan's shores precisely when Israelite tribes entered from the eastern wilderness. 2 migrations, 2 nations, 1 contested territory. This collision engineered by history itself would define both civilizations for centuries. Philistines established themselves along the coastal plain in 5 fortified cities. Israelites moved into central hill country, claiming God's promise to Abraham. From that moment, conflict became inevitable. The Philistines weren't Canaanites despite settling in Canaan. Their pottery matched Mycenaean and Minoan cultures from the Aegean, nothing like Canaanite designs. Their architecture revealed central hearth houses typical of Greek construction, not courtyard-style homes common among Semitic peoples. Even their names betray foreign origins. Goliath, Achish, Dagon. These aren't Hebrew or Canaanite. They're linguistic echoes from across the sea, preserved like artifacts from another world. Philistines were foreign invaders who organized into a pentapolis, 5 independent city-states: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. Each ruled by a lord called a Saran in Hebrew, a unique political structure in Canaan. These cities were strategically positioned, controlling coastal trade routes, guaranteeing access to Egypt southward and Mesopotamia northward. This wasn't a struggling tribe. This was a miniature empire, organized, fortified, determined to dominate economically and militarily. Their religion reflected foreign origins. They worshipped Dagon, a deity of grain linked to storm and warfare. They venerated Baal-zebub, later mocked as Lord of the Flies. Archaeological evidence suggests temple prostitution and possibly human sacrifice. These weren't Canaanite gods. These were deities carried across the sea, alien gods representing everything Israel's covenant with Yahweh opposed. But Philistines possessed something more dangerous than foreign gods. They controlled iron technology. 1 Samuel 13, verses 19 through 22 reveals shocking reality. Not a blacksmith could be found in Israel, because Philistines prevented Hebrews from making swords or spears. All Israel went to Philistines for sharpening plow points, mattocks, axes, and sickles. On battle day, no soldier with Saul and Jonathan had sword or spear. Only Saul and Jonathan had them. This was technological suppression. Economic warfare. Philistines monopolized iron production, forcing Israel into bronze dependency, significantly inferior for weapons and tools. Iron weapons were harder, held edges better, lasted longer. Iron agricultural tools transformed farming, increasing yields and economic stability. Controlling iron meant controlling the future itself. Israel was kept deliberately weak, unable to compete militarily or economically. Archaeological excavations confirm this biblical account. Iron smelting furnaces appear in Philistine cities but are notably absent in Israelite settlements from identical periods. Philistines didn't just defeat Israel on battlefields. They prevented proper armament, creating technological gaps lasting generations. But technology alone doesn't explain 600 years of conflict. The real answer runs deeper, touching Israel's theological core. God promised Israel land stretching from Egypt's river to the Euphrates. Philistines occupied the coastal plain, a critical portion of that promised territory. This wasn't political rivalry. This was covenant obstruction. Philistine presence directly challenged God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. While they remained, Israel's possession stayed incomplete. The most dramatic illustration occurs in 1 Samuel 4-6. Israelites, desperate for victory, brought the Ark of the Covenant into battle. Philistines captured it, carrying the sacred object to Dagon's temple in Ashdod. Next morning, Dagon's statue had fallen face down before the Arkansas. They set it upright. Second morning, Dagon fell again, head and hands broken off. Philistines were struck with tumors and plagues spreading through cities. Terrified, they returned the ark with guilt offerings. This reveals something essential. Even Philistine gods couldn't stand before Yahweh. The conflict wasn't about land or military dominance. It was about which deity would rule Canaan: Yahweh, Israel's God, or the foreign gods from the sea. Every major Israelite leader was defined by Philistine conflict. Samson spent his life in vendetta against them. dying when he destroyed Dagon's temple. King Saul died fighting them on Mount Gilboa, his body displayed on Beth-shan's walls. David rose to power defeating Goliath, whose size terrorized Israel's army 40 days. The pattern is unmistakable. This transcended politics. It was about who would rule Canaan. Moabites seduced Israel through religion, enticing them to worship Baal through immorality. Philistines employed different strategy. They seduced Israel through culture and beauty, through their advanced civilization's allure. Different methods, identical objective. Compromise Israel's covenant with God. Nobody illustrates this danger better than Samson, whose supernatural strength couldn't save him from cultural compromise. Judges 14 introduces his first Philistine woman. Samson went to Timnah and saw a young Philistine woman. He told his parents, "Get her for me as my wife." His parents objected. "Isn't there an acceptable woman among our people? Must you go to uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson insisted, "Get her for me. She's the right one." The wedding feast lasted 7 days, complete immersion in Philistine culture. When Philistines couldn't solve his riddle, they threatened his wife until she betrayed him. The marriage ended in violence. Later, Judges 16 records Samson went to Gaza and saw a prostitute. Philistines planned dawn ambush, but Samson arose at midnight, took the city gate doors and posts, pulled them up, and carried them to the hill facing Hebron. He was powerful, yes, but compromised. Then came Delilah. Judges 16, verse 4 states Samson fell in love with a woman in Sorek Valley named Delilah. The 5 Philistine lords said, "Lure him into showing his strength's secret so we can overpower him. Each will give you 1,100 silver shekels." This was enormous fortune. Delilah agreed. 3 times she asked his strength's secret. 3 times he lied. Each time she tried binding him using his instructions. Each time he broke free effortlessly. But she wore him down with nagging. He told her everything. "No razor has touched my head, because I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me." The real problem wasn't the haircut. The problem was Samson's systematic choice of Philistine culture over his Nazirite vow. A Nazirite was supposed to be set apart to God, abstaining from wine, avoiding dead bodies, never cutting hair. Samson violated every part throughout his life. Hair was merely the final visible symbol of complete compromise. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep and had someone shave his 7 braids. When he awoke, Judges 16, verse 20 records one of Scripture's most tragic verses. He awoke thinking, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he didn't know the Lord had left him. Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and put him grinding grain in prison like an animal. But his hair began growing back. Philistines brought him to Dagon's temple for great sacrifice. About 3,000 men and women on the roof watched Samson being mocked. Samson prayed one final time. "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more." He reached toward the 2 central pillars supporting the temple, braced himself, and pushed with all might. The temple collapsed, killing everyone inside. Judges 16, verse 30 says he killed many more when he died than while he lived. The lesson is unmistakable. Israel's greatest threat wasn't military conquest. It was cultural compromise. Philistines understood something profound. You don't defeat Israel with swords. You defeat them by making them want to be like you. The conflict evolved through distinct phases. During the Judges period, approximately 1200 to 1050 before Common Era, Philistines expanded aggressively. Shamgar killed 600 with an ox goad. Samson fought devastatingly in Gaza and Timnah. But these were individual resistance acts, not organized campaigns. Israelites remained oppressed, disorganized, desperate for unity. Under King Saul's reign, from 1050 to 1010 before Common Era, warfare reached fever pitch. Constant border skirmishes defined this era. When Goliath issued his challenge, Philistines remained confident in superiority. Saul's death on Mount Gilboa proved that confidence valid. The turning point came with David. After defeating Goliath, David actually became a Philistine mercenary while fleeing Saul's jealous rage. But once king, David crushed Philistines decisively at Baal-perazim, recorded in 2 Samuel 5. From that moment, Philistines never again threatened Israel's heartland. Their power was broken, though not completely destroyed. From 970 to 586 before Common Era, Philistines declined inexorably. Hebrew prophets pronounced judgment. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, and Zephaniah declared Philistine cities would fall. Assyria conquered them brutally in 701 before Common Era. Babylon destroyed Ashkelon in 604 before Common Era. By the Babylonian exile, Philistines had been culturally absorbed, their identity dissolving into surrounding populations. Three powerful forces combined to erase the Philistines from history completely. Number 1. Military annihilation. The Assyrian Empire devastated Philistine cities in 701 before the Common Era under Sennacherib, employing the brutal tactics for which Assyria became infamous. Babylon completed the destruction in 604 before the Common Era when Nebuchadnezzar razed Ashkelon and deported its survivors. Philistine military capacity was obliterated so thoroughly that they never recovered. Number 2. Cultural absorption. By 600 before the Common Era, no Philistine inscriptions appear in the archaeological record anywhere. Their language disappeared completely, leaving not a single text for modern scholars to study. Pottery traditions that had remained distinctively Aegean for centuries began merging with Canaanite and Judean styles. Intermarriage, economic integration, and loss of political independence erased their cultural distinctiveness within just a few generations. Number 3. Prophetic fulfillment. Zephaniah chapter 2, verses 4 through 7 declared that Gaza would be abandoned and Ashkelon left in ruins. Jeremiah chapter 47, verse 4 announced that the Lord was about to destroy the Philistines, the remnant from the coasts of Caphtor. Every prophecy came true with precision. The genetic evidence is particularly striking and settles the question definitively. In 2019, scientists conducted DNA analysis on skeletal remains from ancient Ashkelon, one of the 5 major Philistine cities. The study revealed European ancestry, specifically from southern Europe in the region of Greece and Sardinia. This confirmed the biblical account that the Philistines came from across the sea. But the study also showed that in later periods, the distinctive Philistine genetic signature disappeared completely through intermarriage with local populations. There is zero genetic continuity between the ancient Philistines and any modern population in the region today. No linguistic traces survived. No religious practices continued. No social structures persisted. No pottery techniques carried forward into later periods. The Philistines were extinct. By the time of Christ, they had been gone for more than 500 years, completely absorbed and forgotten. But their name was about to be resurrected, not by descendants, but as a weapon of psychological warfare. In 135 of the Common Era, the Jewish people launched their final revolt against Roman occupation under the leadership of Simon bar Kokhba. Rome crushed the rebellion with extreme brutality that shocked even by Roman standards. Emperor Hadrian sought not merely to defeat the Jews militarily, but to erase their identity from the land itself through systematic cultural genocide. Jerusalem was renamed Aelia Capitolina, after Hadrian's family name. Jews were forbidden from entering the city on pain of death. And the province of Judea was renamed Syria Palestina, Palestine. This was deliberate humiliation calculated with precision. Hadrian chose the name of ancient Israel's enemies, the Philistines, to rename the Jewish homeland. It was psychological warfare designed to break the connection between the Jewish people and their ancestral land. The strategy was transparent. Erase Jewish identity by replacing it with a reference to extinct enemies. make the land itself an insult to Jewish claims. This detail is absolutely critical to understanding the modern conflict. Rome didn't rename the land after living Philistines. They renamed it after a memory, a people who hadn't existed for more than 700 years. There were no Philistines in 135 of the Common Era. There hadn't been Philistines for 7 centuries. The name was chosen precisely because it represented everything opposite to Jewish presence in the land. It was a curse disguised as geography. Modern Palestinians are not Philistines. This isn't a political statement intended to delegitimize anyone. It's simply historical fact that must be acknowledged. Palestinians are ethnically Arab, descended from peoples who migrated from the Arabian Peninsula beginning in the 7th century of the Common Era. They speak Arabic, a Semitic language from a completely different language family than whatever the Philistines spoke. Their religious identity is primarily Muslim with some Christian minorities, reflecting the Arab Islamic conquests that began in 636 of the Common Era. Their cultural practices, the cuisine, the music, the social structures, are Arab, not Aegean. The timeline proves the disconnect with absolute clarity. The ancient Philistines existed from approximately 1175 before the Common Era until 600 before the Common Era, after which they were extinct. Rome renamed Judea to Palestine in 135 of the Common Era, some 700 years after the Philistines disappeared. The Arab conquest occurred in 636 of the Common Era, some 1200 years after Philistine extinction. The modern Palestinian national identity emerged in the 20th century as a political movement, not as an ancestral claim stretching back millennia. Scholars across the ideological spectrum confirm these facts. There is no genetic link between ancient Philistines and modern Palestinians. DNA analysis of Philistine skeletons shows Aegean ancestry, not Semitic. The name Palestine is a geographical term imposed by Rome, not an ethnic or ancestral identity. Modern Palestinians are Arabs who adopted a Roman geographical label. This doesn't diminish their humanity or their connection to the land in recent centuries. It simply clarifies that the name they carry has zero ethnic or ancestral connection to the ancient Philistines. The strategic use of the name Palestine today mirrors the original Philistine conflict in striking ways that cannot be coincidental. Political movements claim Palestinians are indigenous and Israelis are colonizers. The claim rests heavily on the name Palestine as proof of ancient roots. But that very name was imposed by colonizers, the Romans, specifically to eradicate Jewish identity from the land. The ancient Philistines invaded from the sea. They weren't indigenous to Canaan any more than the Romans were. They fought for 6 centuries to prevent Israel's possession of the land God had promised them. They were ultimately destroyed, erased by the very prophecies they sought to defy. The modern use of their name follows the same objective, denying the Jewish claim to the land. This raises a question that cannot be ignored or dismissed. If God eradicated the actual Philistines for opposing his covenant people, what does it mean that their name, just their name, has been resurrected to oppose Israel again? The ancient Philistines brought iron and foreign gods. They built fortified cities and organized armies. They controlled trade routes and possessed superior technology. None of it saved them. They were eradicated because they stood in the way of a promise God intended to keep. The Philistines came from the sea with iron and foreign gods. God erased them from existence. But their name lived on, not in descendants, but in a Roman insult designed to wound Jewish identity. Today, that insult is wielded in the same battle the Philistines fought. The battle over who has rightful claim to the land God promised to Israel. The Philistines are gone. The promise remains. And history has already shown us which one endures. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe there's prophetic significance to the name Palestine being used against Israel today, or is it simply a coincidence of history? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is a conversation the church desperately needs to have, and your perspective matters. If this investigation challenged what you thought you knew about history, Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification bell. Truth is hidden in Scripture and history, and we're here to uncover one mystery at a time. I'll see you in the next revelation.